Mr. Dalton was a man everyone in the city knew. He was rich, powerful, and always busy. People saw him stepping out of his big cars in clean suits, talking on his phone, and giving orders to others. He owned many companies and lived in a large house on the hill outside town. His mansion had tall iron gates, and no one from the outside was ever allowed in. To the world, he seemed to have everything a perfect life. But inside that house was a secret that no one dared to talk about. In one of the rooms at the far end of the mansion lived a little girl named Lily. She was Mr. Dalton's only child. She was 12 years old and had been born with autism. Her mother had loved her deeply, but after her mother passed away, everything changed. Mr. Dalton didn't understand how to care for her. He saw her quietness and sensitivity as something to hide from the world. He didn't like when people asked about her, and he didn't like how she sometimes rocked back and forth or covered her ears when noises got too loud. He didn't know that these were just her ways to feel safe. Instead of showing her love, he kept her hidden. He told the maids to keep her in a small room, away from everyone. The room had a small bed, a few toys, and bars on the window, so she couldn't wander off. He called it for her safety, but deep down, it was really for his pride. He didn't want anyone to see that his daughter was different. But Lily was not completely alone. She had one true friend, a big German shepherd named Max. Max had been her mother's dog. After her mother's death, Max refused to leave Lily's side. Every morning, he would sit near the bars of her small room, his nose poking through the spaces, waiting for her to wake up. When she smiled, he wagged his tail. When she cried, he made soft sounds, trying to calm her down. Lily didn't talk much, but she talked to Max in her own way. She would hum songs, draw small pictures on pieces of paper, and slide them under the door. Max would press his paw on the floor outside, as if he was answering her. Sometimes she would whisper, "Good boy, Max," and he'd bark softly in reply. The servants noticed how loyal Max was, but they never said much. Everyone was afraid of Mr. Dalton. He didn't like questions. He gave orders, and people followed them. He would walk through the mansion with a straight face, never smiling. The only photo of his late wife and Lily hung on the wall in his office, but he never looked at it. He kept himself busy with money, meetings, and more money. One stormy night, everything began to change. The sky turned dark, and heavy rain fell on the mansion. The wind howled, shaking the windows. Thunder echoed through the hills, and the lights flickered before going out completely. The entire house was in darkness. The staff ran around with candles, trying to fix the power. In her small room, Lily woke up scared. She didn't like loud sounds. She started covering her ears and crying softly. The rain was so loud it felt like the sky was breaking apart. She called out for Max in her shaky voice. Max, who had been resting outside her room, jumped up immediately. He barked once and pushed his nose through the bars to let her know he was there. But something was wrong. The old wooden door to Lily's room had jammed because of the storm. The water leaking from the ceiling made the lock swell tight. The servants tried to open it, but it wouldn't move. One of them ran to call Mr. Dalton, but he wasn't home. He was attending a late meeting in the city. Max barked louder. He could hear Lily crying from inside. He scratched at the door with his paws, again and again. The sound of his claws hitting the wood echoed through the hall. The servants tried to pull him back, but he growled softly, not at them, but at the situation. He knew the little girl inside needed him. Minutes passed. The thunder grew louder. Water was coming through the roof now. Max pushed against the door with all his strength. His nails broke. His fur was soaked from the rain coming through the broken window. But he didn't stop. He kept hitting the door with his body, again and again, until the wood cracked slightly. Then, with one final push, the lock broke. The door swung open and Max ran inside. Lily was sitting on the bed, shaking. Max ran to her and licked her hand gently. She stopped crying for a moment and looked at him with wide eyes. "Max," she whispered softly, her voice trembling. He barked once, as if saying, "Come with me." He then pulled at the edge of her blanket with his mouth and pointed toward the hallway. Slowly, Lily stood up. She followed Max through the dark corridor, her small feet stepping carefully on the cold marble floor. The servants saw them and gasped. No one had seen her outside that room in years. Max led her down the stairs, avoiding the broken glass and puddles from the storm. He brought her to the living room, where the big fireplace stood. One of the maids quickly lit it to keep her warm when Mr. Dalton arrived home a few minutes later. He was angry. He had been called from his meeting and drove back through the storm, thinking his mansion was in chaos. But when he entered the house, he froze. There, near the fireplace, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. His daughter sitting freely, her head resting against Max's fur. Her small hands were holding onto Max's collar, and she was whispering something softly. The firelight made her face glow, and for the first time, she looked peaceful. Mr. Dalton didn't move. His briefcase slipped from his hand and fell on the floor. His heart felt heavy. He wanted to shout, to ask who had let her out, but he couldn't. The sight of her and the dog stopped him completely. Max looked up at him with steady eyes, as if saying, "You forgot her." I didn't. For a long moment, the three of them stayed still, the father, the daughter, and the loyal dog. Then Lily did something that broke the silence. She pointed at Mr. Dalton and said softly, "Papa?" It was the first time she had spoken in front of him in years. Mr. Dalton's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. Slowly, he nodded and whispered, "Yes, Lily." Something changed inside him that night. The storm outside began to fade, but another storm was happening in his heart, one that was washing away years of pride and coldness. He realized that while he was chasing wealth, the only treasure he truly had was the one he had locked away. And it took a faithful German shepherd to remind him of that dot as the fire burned brighter. Max lay beside Lily and rested his head on her lap. Mr. Dalton sat down across from them, quietly watching. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel empty anymore. The sound of the storm faded, replaced by Lily's soft humming and the calm breathing of the dog that had done what no one else dared. He had opened the door not only to a room, but to a father's heart. The next morning, sunlight poured through the large windows of the mansion, filling the halls with soft golden light. The storm was over, and the air smelled fresh and clean. For the first time in years, laughter echoed faintly through the house. It came from Lily. She was sitting in the garden, surrounded by flowers, her small hands reaching out to feel the petals. Max sat right beside her, his ears up and eyes gentle from the balcony above. Mr. Dalton stood watching them. He had not slept the whole night. The picture of his daughter sitting by the fire with Max kept replaying in his mind. He had spent years hiding her away, believing he was protecting her, when in truth he was only protecting his pride. His chest felt heavy with regret. When he finally walked down into the garden, Lily looked up. She didn't run to him or hide. She simply watched him quietly. Her eyes were calm, curious. Mr. Dalton stopped a few steps away. He didn't know how to speak to her anymore. It had been so long. Max looked between them, as if waiting for something to happen. Mr. Dalton took a deep breath. "Good morning, Lily," he said softly. His voice was shaky, unsure. Lily tilted her head and smiled faintly. It was a small smile, but to him, it felt like the sun had come out again. He sat on the bench near her and looked at Max. The dog wagged his tail slowly, keeping a protective watch. "You've been a brave one," Mr. Dalton whispered to the dog. He then turned to Lily. "I'm sorry," he said in a low voice. I didn't know how to care for you, but I want to try now, if you'll let me." Lily didn't answer with words. Instead, she stood up, walked toward him, and touched his hand softly. That small touch made his eyes fill with tears. He hadn't felt her hand since she was a baby. Max barked once, as if approving the moment. That day was the beginning of a new life in the Dalton mansion. The bars were removed from Lily's old room. Mr. Dalton called doctors, therapists, and teachers to help him understand autism better. He didn't want to hide his daughter anymore. He wanted to learn how to love her properly. The house staff was surprised. They had never seen their boss smile before. Now, he spent time with his daughter every morning. He learned her routines, what made her happy, what made her scared, and how she used colors to express herself. He discovered she loved painting stars. He brought her a large canvas and bright paints. Together, they made a picture of the sky. She painted stars while he painted the moon, and Max sat beside them, wagging his tail like a proud guardian. Each day, Lily grew more comfortable. She still didn't talk much, but her laughter filled the house. She loved to dance in the rain with Max. She would hum songs to him, and he would bark softly in rhythm. Mr. Dalton often stood at the door, watching them, wondering how he had ever thought that keeping her locked away was love. Weeks turned into months. The mansion that once felt cold now felt like a home. Mr. Dalton even opened the gates to children from nearby schools, inviting them for art classes and pet therapy sessions. People were amazed when they saw the once cold businessman laughing and helping children paint. The story spread around town. The rich man who changed because of his daughter and her German shepherd. But time moved on, and one morning, Mr. Dalton noticed something that made his heart ache. Max was slowing down. He was older now, his fur graying around the muzzle. He didn't run as fast, and sometimes, when Lily called him, he took a moment before standing up. Lily noticed it too. She would sit beside him for hours, brushing his fur gently, whispering things only he seemed to understand. Max still followed her everywhere, but now his steps were slower. One evening, when the family sat together in the garden, Max laid his head on Lily's lap and closed his eyes. He looked peaceful, tired but content. Mr. Dalton knew what was happening. He knelt beside them, stroking Max's fur. "You've done more for this family than I ever did," he whispered. His voice trembled. Lily looked at him, her eyes wide and full of tears. She placed her small hand on Max's paw and whispered, "Good boy." That night, Max passed away quietly in his sleep. He left the world as gently as he had lived, calm, loyal, and loving. When Lily woke up the next morning and realized he wasn't there, she didn't cry loudly. She walked to the garden, where Mr. Dalton had buried him under a large oak tree. She sat by this spot silently, holding a drawing she had made, a picture of Max with wings. She placed it on the ground and whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Mr. Dalton stood behind her, tears falling freely. He realized that Max had done what no person could. He had taught him how to love. That dog had changed both their lives forever. In the weeks that followed, the garden became a place of healing. Mr. Dalton planted flowers around Max's resting spot. Every morning, Lily would sit there and talk softly, as if Max could still hear her. A few months later, Mr. Dalton had an idea. He wanted to do something meaningful to honor Max's memory. He used part of his wealth to build a small center behind the mansion. It was called the Max Foundation. The place became a safe home for children with autism and other special needs. There were therapy animals, music sessions, art rooms, and kind teachers. Mr. Dalton worked there himself, welcoming families who once felt hopeless. He often told them, "My daughter and a dog showed me what love really is." Don't ever hide your children. The world needs their light. Lily thrived at the foundation. She met other children who were like her and smiled more than ever before. Her art was displayed on the walls, colorful stars, bright hearts, and a painting of Max standing under a rainbow. Years passed, and Lily grew into a young woman. She still visited Max's grave every day, leaving fresh flowers and talking softly as if he were listening. Mr. Dalton grew older too, but he was a different man now, kind, patient, and full of warmth. People often asked him why he gave so much of his time and money to the foundation. He always smiled and said, "Because one brave German shepherd opened my heart." One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Mr. Dalton and Lily walked together in the garden. The light was soft, golden, and peaceful. Birds flew across the sky. Lily looked up and said quietly, "Papa, Max is happy now." He nodded, smiling with tears in his eyes. "Yes," he said, "and I think he's proud of us." They stood there in silence, watching the sunset. The garden was full of laughter from children playing nearby, children who were free to be themselves. The same laughter that Max had once protected now filled the air every day. As the last rays of the sun touched the oak tree, a gentle breeze passed through, rustling the leaves. Lily smiled, feeling something warm inside her heart. It was as if Max was still there, watching, guarding, loving Dot, and in that moment, Mr. Dalton knew that even though Max was gone, his spirit would never leave them. His loyalty had changed a life, healed a family, and created a home where love would always live.